Next News. Breaking news.
What looked like one ugly fraud case in Minnesota is blowing open into something far bigger. A possible nationwide system feeding off taxpayers across multiple government programs at once. The Trump administration is no longer talking like this is random abuse or isolated scams or just a few bad actors. They're talking like investigators may have found an industrial-scale machine built to loot Medicaid, COVID relief, autism services, and more. Now, after explosive new numbers out of North Carolina, HHS is moving in all 50 states. So here's the question. Was Minnesota the scandal, or was Minnesota just the first place they looked? See, this matters because once you connect the dots, the pattern gets ugly fast. The White House is already highlighting a $21 million Medicaid fraud case in Minnesota with Shamso, Ahmed, Hassan, and Hanaan, Mursal, Yusuf arrested on healthcare fraud charges. That alone would be major news, but now the Trump administration is widening the aperture. HHS launching a wide-scale audit of all 50 states' taxpayer-funded autism programs after data from North Carolina showed an eye-popping surge in billing that reportedly jumped 11,000%, while other reporting put the figure even higher. Either way, the signal is the same. Something is wildly out of line. Add in the evidence that Medicaid billing for ABA therapy has surged in state after state, and suddenly this stops looking local. Starts looking like a gold rush for fraudsters who spotted weak oversight, massive public spending, and an open door. President Trump warned you haven't seen anything yet, and he may be right. And while Washington works to lock down fraud at home, there is another urgent America First fight that is happening right now, our critical mineral supply chain. This breaking news on America's critical mineral supply chain. The SAGA metal story just got a lot stronger. Less than 48 hours ago, SAGA released new information suggesting its radar project may be sitting on one of the largest titanium-vanadium systems on the entire planet. You see, that matters because vanadium is critical for defense, energy, storage, aerospace, and the industrial backbone that China has spent years dominating. SAGA Metals is trading as, take note, SAGMF in the U.S. and SAGA in Canada. Now, to understand the scale, you need to compare the radar project to China's Panxinhua deposit. Now, that is a state-linked system. It's valued in the multi-billion-dollar range. It's also responsible for over 40% of global vanadium supply. And that is why SAGA has got a checkmate on China. But you need to check out the in-depth interview with the CEO on this topic I did just a few weekends ago, and check the exclusive briefing that is linked below, but it's only for Next News viewers. Now back to the bombshell at home, because the fraud story just got even bigger. See, here's the part the media really doesn't want to say out loud. The North Carolina numbers changed the entire story. For months, the critics, they tried to wave off Minnesota as some sort of weird regional scandal. Not anymore. When another state suddenly posts billing explosions in autism programs, and HHS answers with a 50-state audit that tells you the Trump administration believes this may be systemic. And once you add COVID money, Medicaid money, federal reimbursement, and weak controls into the very same picture, the real question becomes brutally simple. How many industries were built around stealing from you? That's the question. HHS now launching a wide-scale audit of all 50 states' taxpayer autism programs due to rampant fraud. North Carolina just dropped 11,000% surge in autism billing. 11,000%. It wasn't just Minnesota. You haven't seen anything yet. That is what President Trump said in the briefing room, or the cabinet room this week. It's being called a gold rush of fraud.
Now we'll audit all 50 American states looking for potentially massive fraud in the billing of autism treatment. This is happening now amid a recent explosion in spending on autism services. North Carolina alone apparently saw an 11,000% increase in the last 4 years. Why was that? Good question for Alexandria Hoff, live in D.C. Alex, hello. Good morning.
Hey, Bill, yeah, it is a good question because according to that data coming out of North Carolina, the use of taxpayer-funded autism services is significantly outpacing the number of children being diagnosed. So something's not right there, and it's not just in the Tar Heel State. A recent analysis by the Cato Institute found that in 5 years, Medicaid billing has surged in every other state that makes their data public for money spent on ABA therapy. It's applied behavior analysis, that's what it's called. For reference, Minnesota's ABA spending increased by about 51,000% since 2018. We all know what happened there. President Trump spoke on that yesterday.
You saw that with millions of dollars just being stolen. Everybody had autism. Everybody had autism, they said. It was incredible, actually. And I've just seen I see what they're doing. You haven't seen anything yet.
You know, it's not necessarily malice everywhere. That hasn't been proven yet. ABA therapy is considered a critical resource for children diagnosed with autism, but given its complicated billing structure, incentive to overbill, an influx of private equity-backed providers into that space, it's really being looked at like a gold rush. Audits so far by HHS's Office of Inspector General has uncovered $198 million in improper payments made in just 4 states, $410 million incorrectly billed. And examining this really depends on each state's ability to organize and analyze its own spending. That's why HHS is now deploying AI tools to double check that oversight and try to root out any possible fraud, Bill.
Okay.
So that is the latest 50-state autism audit. Tells you the fraud machine is bigger than Minnesota. Now the Trump team says the Biden crowd also tried to bury $200 billion in fake PPP loans.
Think about, at the SBA, we found $200 billion in fraudulent PPP loans that the Biden administration tried to hide and forgive and sweep under the rug. We've turned the first $22 billion of that over to Treasury for collections and to DOJ for prosecution. Our Inspector General is already announcing that people are going to jail. There are jail sentences now being served. We've announced that 140,000 people have been barred from ever getting SBA loans again, defrauding the government.
Biden sweeping it all under the rug. So it's not just one program getting looted, it's a pattern of Washington looking the other way. FBI Director Kash Patel lays out how that crackdown reaches overseas. Scam compounds are modern-day criminal enterprises built to steal from Americans, launder money, and exploit traffic workers. The FBI led the charge to take down Prince Group in Cambodia and Operation Sand Dollar in Dubai, shutting down more than $8 billion in fraud, freeing nearly 2,000 traffic workers and arresting nearly 300 people. So the fraud fight is global, with traffickers and money launderers in the crosshairs. Back here at home, a Minnesota whistleblower says North Carolina autism billing spike is so insane it can't even pass the smell test.
Well, when there's that much smoke, you know there's fire somewhere. So what is the problem with turning over the documents?
Yeah, it seems like a very simple solution. I want to get your reaction to a story I mentioned that I'm not going to let go. It's this Minnesota fraudster who cuts no jail plea deal with a key condition tied to alleged mastermind. These were the texts I put up. This guy is co-defendant and fraud, fled the country, and they just don't give him jail time. I mean, your hard work really led to moments like this. What's your reaction to this?
Well, I'm always on the edge of sanity and insanity here when I see this. You know, we had that other gentleman who was convicted of $7.2 million of fraud. A unanimous conviction by the jury, and Judge Sarah West overturned the guilty verdict. That was just recently. And then we had this woman who owned the Future Leaders Early Learning Center, which Nick and I featured in our video. And she, over the last 5 years, has gotten almost $12 million for her child care. She was also part in the Feeding Our Future fraud, where she said she served 426,000 meals at her child care facility, which is not a very big place. And she was fleeing the country. They caught her at the airport. She had a one-way ticket to London, where she owns a very large home. So look, when I started all this, I said, I'm going to destroy this whole fraud empire. And I realized that it was not only throughout Minnesota, but it had spread throughout the country. And I knew it was in Columbus, Ohio, it was in Lewiston, Maine. It's not in California, it's not in LA, because that's the Russian Armenian mob out there that has the hospice centers that Nick uncovered. But now we see in North Carolina, the story came out today, that they've had a 47,000% increase in autism billings. 47,000% over what, 4 years? It's impossible. So I agree that AI is the key to the linchpin to stopping this, but it has to be the right AI, because AI can be corrupted. So it has to be set with the right information, because AI looks at what gets put in, and that's what it formulates when it comes up with the answers to questions that we have. We have to take the human element out of this, because we cannot trust the people who are in these positions to do the right thing.
David Hoke, thank you. Appreciate you. And I'm going to check on that.
So the whistleblower is saying the numbers are impossible and the paper trail needs to come clean. Next, Tim Walz gets pressed on the fraud inside Minnesota's Somali community. His answer goes straight to identity politics after 2 women from Minnesota's Somali community were arrested in a $21 million Medicaid fraud scheme.
Do you want to hear more from members and leaders from the Somali community to say, we need to look at ourselves, we need to hold our own neighbors accountable, because look at the damage that this has done to our community. What do you want to hear more from, instead of just saying, don't blame us? Do you want to see more ownership and oversight from within the Somali?
Look, it's not law-abiding citizens. If that were the case, there's a lot of white men should be holding a lot of white men accountable for the crimes that they have committed.
Like you?
I think for the community to maybe
Like you,
educate
Tim?
their population, because I think what you're seeing here is there's secondary victims in this, that there's providers inside the community that are then victimizing the community themselves by signing them up, because when we're going to some of these people, they're like, I had no idea I was in this program. So I think it's asking us then, for every crime, which of course the majority being committed by white men, asking us to do more about that. I think it's crime in general. And I think the biggest thing on this is just making sure that we're educating the population. And again, this is 80 people or so that have been convicted in this, maybe some more in that. Out of
The irony here is that he's white. And this is what the White House posted. Minnesota fraud schemes are finished. The days of scamming American taxpayers are done. Minnesota residents arrested for $21 million Medicaid fraud scheme. Yeah. And then comes the biggest tell of all. It's no longer being framed as clerical abuse or sloppy bookkeeping. FBI Director Kash Patel says the scam compounds in Cambodia and Dubai, they were shut down in operations that took down more than $8 billion in fraud, freed nearly 2,000 traffic workers, and led to nearly 300 arrests. That's not a paperwork error. That's organized crime. And on top of that, the SBA says investigators found $200 billion in fraudulent PPP loans from the previous administration era, with $22 billion already sent to Treasury for collection and DOJ for prosecution. And 140,000 people barred from future SBA loans. So, yes, this is a real story. Fraud wasn't random. It may have been a sprawling criminal economy feeding on government expansion. And that's why this moment, why it matters so much. The Trump administration is doing what the establishment refused to do for years. Treat fraud like a national emergency, not a public relations problem. Minnesota may have been the first crack in the wall. North Carolina may be proof that the wall is rotten everywhere. And if these audits keep uncovering numbers like this, we may be looking at one of the biggest domestic scandals of Trump's second term, a full-scale exposure of how federal programs were exploited while bureaucrats looked the other way. Even Tim Walz's response tells you where Democrats are headed: deflect, dodge, and refuse accountability. But the country's done with excuses. We want prosecutions, recoveries, and we want answers. Share this report everywhere. Subscribe if you're sick of being lied to. And drop your answer in the comments. Should every governor and agency head in America now face direct scrutiny over fraud on their watch? Yes or no? See those numbers on your screen right there? 844-840-4963. Text the words raw feed to that secret number so you and I can maintain our connection when the algorithm and notifications determine otherwise. And since we're celebrating our 250th year here as a beautiful republic, celebrate with us. Find some America 250 gear just for you in our merch shelf below this video.
The system controls information. Information control is power.
They don't want you to see this.
The truth only survives together. They don't want this. Share this now.